Good morning. Happy Sunday, everybody. Welcome in at Pickswise and Pickswise.com. This is Let's Bet It, presented by Superbook Sports. I'm Mark Zinno. He's Jared Smith. Jam-packed show for you here on this divisional playoff weekend. As we round out Sunday, we'll recap yesterday's games as well. We will look towards today's games. Obviously, we'll get propping with Bobby Stanley, a.k.a. Prop Holliday. Of course, we get our plays of the day. Reminder to download that Pickswise app, available on the Apple Store and Google Play as well. Subscribe to the Pickswise YouTube channel. Jared, happy Sunday morning to you. How was your Saturday?
It's great. Honestly, couldn't have asked for a better Saturday. Besides one little, I really thought Trevor Lawrence was going to go over his passing yards prop number. Game script certainly played out that way, but
if Christian Kirk catches that one ball, he probably does.
Yeah, that one probably was the banger. But besides that, I thought game script wise, both games were fairly predictable. I had a feeling Daniel Jones was going to have a little bit of a tougher time this week against the Eagles than he did against the Vikings. I had no idea in my wildest dreams that the Vikings defense, based off of what I saw yesterday with Daniel Jones and the Eagles, I can now confirm, I am 100% certain that last week's performance by the Vikings defense was the worst defensive performance that I watched all season, based off of what I saw yesterday from Daniel Jones and the Giants receivers. But if you're a Vikings fan, you saved yourself a week of embarrassment and a few spots in the draft, because the Eagles weren't losing to either of the Giants or the Vikings yesterday. No. And very, very solid performance. I don't think Jalen Hurts 100%, though. I think that's something to keep an eye on for next week. But I think he was clearly healthy enough, the defense, really, to take care of business yesterday.
Again, I generally stayed off the Giants-Eagles game, both as a fan and just not having with Jalen Hurts' health in question. I couldn't really swallow the variance of not knowing what was going to go on. So I stayed off that game. We cleared the under yesterday. I did have the Jones prop, which was miserable. He had no shot, but it was exactly what I said it was. I meant side and total, but you're right. Yeah, I talked about the Jones prop over the passing. And it's exactly, if he didn't get over that number, they were getting crushed. And they were getting crushed, right? I just thought maybe the game script with them trailing would lead to him throwing more, but he just had no time. I mean, it was a complete beatdown from start to finish from the Eagles and Giants. So I posted my wagers on KC and Jacksonville. I got nipped in the first quarter because of that stupid kickoff return. This is the second time in 3 weeks that a kickoff return came back to bite me after Kansas City went up 7-0. Of course, Jacksonville gets that kickoff return, puts them inside the 40, or Kansas City's 40, and they easily score a touchdown. I was hoping that KC would end up getting a field goal, but then, of course, Mahomes gets hurt. My first half, KC -5 was a sweat more than it needed to be, but that came home, and the under in Jacksonville, KC came home. And let's see what's going to happen with Mahomes here going forward. I mean, will odds makers take into account his ankle when they're putting this line together next week, Jared?
Absolutely, but they can't. It's going to be like we've seen for every game this year with injuries. It'll be half baked in probably, and the bettors are going to have to risk yay or nay on one side or the other, and that's going to be a personal choice. I'll be honest. I feel like the injury, we become so accustomed to dealing with these types of situations. It was first it was COVID, and then the injuries became a very fluky thing week to week. I think it's an easy stay off until we see the line. Like, I'm not, and grant, I don't make gambling does not provide me income, so I'm not concerned with getting my money into the middle right away to make sure I'm on the right side of whatever injury move we're going to see. And I'm going to assume that 99.9, probably 100% of the people that are watching this show are not professional gamblers that do not make their income on betting. So how quickly you get your chips into the middle on the Chiefs versus whoever next week, I think is inconsequential. Jeez, that's not a word. Inconsequential. And it's okay to wait, because the information of whether or not he's going to play, having your money in the middle, if you're betting on the Chiefs, you want to know if Mahomes is playing. And it's fine to wait. You don't have to bet it tonight when the line drops, because it's going to be tough to know what his situation is. But I'll tell you what, I think the Bills are going to the Super Bowl if they win today. Let's just leave it at that. Just my opinion.
I like that. I like that read. Just personally, I like that read. If the Giants can't win it, I'll take the Buffalo Bills to win it. And the Giants most certainly cannot win it. Real quick, one more.
Whoever wins that game today, I think.
One more question for you in reference to yesterday, and not to be so Giants focused, but I don't think there's any reason for any Giants fan to be upset about the way their season ended.
No.
There's always this feeling when you get blown out in the playoffs, and I've seen a lot of people saying, "Oh, the Giants aren't a playoff team." Giants weren't. No, actually, they were a playoff team. Like,
they were.
Getting blown out in the playoffs, just like losing in the first round of the NCAA tournament, does not validate or invalidate your position in being there. And the Giants should have nothing to hang their heads about. And Daniel Jones, if we were ready to give him a contract last week, we should still be ready to give him a contract this week. Patrick Mahomes wouldn't have won that game yesterday with the rest of the Giants on the field. The Eagles were that much better than the rest of that team.
Yeah, I definitely agree that there's nothing embarrassing about the Giants season. I think there's a lot of I'll say that about both of the losers yesterday. And I saw a clip of Trevor Lawrence like waiting after he got off the field, like waiting in the tunnel, and then every single player, like he was like one of the first guys that came off the field, and then he like waited in the tunnel, and like everyone walked by, and he like congratulated every single person, staff, player that walked by him back into the locker room. And that leadership is not something that can be looked over and glossed over, because I think that was a big reason why Jacksonville made it to the point that they made it to yesterday. And I don't know if I feel the same about Daniel Jones than I do about Trevor Lawrence. I don't know if I would give him an extension. And it has nothing to do with yesterday or anything that happened in the last 2 weeks. I think it's just, I think Brian Dable can do better with a better quarterback. Like, I think or receivers. Let's just leave it at this. I don't know if it's Jones or if it's the rest of the offense as a whole. Saquon Barkley, he's a free agent as well. I think that entire offense needs a renovation. And if they feel Jones is the guy, but they need to add, just like the Jaguars did, Christian Kirk, Evan Ingram, Zay Jones, that needs to be renovated in some way, because the list of receivers that caught passes yesterday, et cetera, you're not winning anything with them long term. But I think both coaches, Peterson and Dable, both staffs, both units, both sides of the ball, have a lot to be proud of, because both of those teams, no one expected the Giants and the Jaguars to be playing on divisional weekend come September. But here we are, and they absolutely get a tip of the cap.
All right, let's turn our attention to Sunday, a divisional playoff weekend. Bengals and Bills first one up. Bills now laying 6 in certain shops, still some 5.5s hanging around there, Jared. We are sitting now comfortably at a total of 48.5, 49, more 49s out there right now than I see anything else, which, was bet down from the 50 that it originally opened at, and now starting to come back up as some money starting to come in, and I'm now seeing 49 straight across the board. So, again, I've been on the Bills all week long. I'm not going to ignore what the Bengals offensive line is going through, and pretend like it's not going to have an effect on today's game. It will. Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase are fantastic, but the way to slow them down is to continually get pressure in Burrow's face, and I think the Bills will do a good amount of that all game long. And plus, Cincinnati can't run the ball on the road. They're last in the NFL in rushing yards on the road this year with 77 per game. That makes them one-dimensional. It's a bad way to be.
Yeah, I definitely think there's a lot of things pointing in the Bills' direction here. I actually got a text from Zachary Lucas last night, one of the odds makers who helps us out every week to do the columns and basically be my eyes and ears. One of many, and it was at 10:45 p.m. I was already passed out. I went to bed at like 9:30 last night after the games. I was exhausted. It was a long day yesterday. And he just said Bills. That was it. That was literally the only thing in the text. There was no context. There was no number or spread or total or anything. He said Bills. And usually he'll send me something when he sees like a sharp player come into his book. He works at Twin Spires, and he'll kind of just give me like a little bit of a heads up on something. And so I'm with you. And I think I don't have a side or total bet on this game. I do have some teaser liability to Cincinnati at 11.5 based off of what I gave out in the column this week. We hit one of the teasers yesterday, like pretty much the entire universe hit the Eagles Chiefs teaser yesterday, but I do have another teaser tied to the Bengals. I think what I'll probably do is I'll probably put a little bit on the Bills, maybe in the first half, and then I'll see where I'm at halftime. And if I can get a little bit more action in at around Bills -3 live, I'll do it. But I think I have to put something on the Bills because of how much teaser liability I have on the Bengals. And I agree with your handicap. I do think there's a lot of holes on this Bengals roster right now. And the Bills are a little bit healthier. But the one thing that I keep going back to when I think about the offensive line, everyone's talking about the offensive line this week. Everyone's talked about the Bengals offensive line for the last year plus. Joe made the adjustment this year. He's getting the ball out quicker. And I don't view the Bills' defensive line as strongly as I do other units. And I'm curious what adjustments Zach Taylor and all those guys make. If there's going to be some kind of a change-up that Joe can go to get the ball out quick and to get it out of the teeth of this Bills defense, which is the linebacking group, Edmonds and Milano. Like, that's kind of like the strength. I think they're a little weaker in the secondary. I don't think they're great in the pass rush. Ed Oliver in the middle, you're right. They're not going to be able to run the ball. But we'll see. Jamar Chase and T. Higgins on the outside, some quick slant routes, quick screens. I can see Jamar Chase having a big game. That might be a prop I'd consider, but I kind of have a feeling this game might be a little closer than we think because of the offensive line, and there might be a changeup implemented. But I do agree, at the core, more often than not, the most probable outcome is the Bills win this game handily because the Bengals are just a little thin.
Well, I would also tell you, I give a distinct coaching edge to Sean McDermott over Zach Taylor. That's just me. If I'm handicapping the coach,
not Lou Anarumo though. Lou Anarumo to me deserves all the flowers. So Lou Anarumo has an edge over Ken Dorsey in the coordinator spot. I will say that. OC versus DC.
That's fair. But again, I think when you talk about McDermott overall, and again, I think Zach Taylor has been better this year than he was last year. So there's an improvement there. But McDermott, to me, I give him an edge. And when you talk about that chess match, Jared, I think that's exactly what I'm sort of alluding to in the same vein, is that, the coaching in this game really is going to come to the forefront and how they can each take advantage of each other's weaknesses. So it's going to be a very interesting game. It's going to be a ton of fun. I am hoping the Bills win no matter what. So at least I get the AFC Championship game in my backyard here in Atlanta, because I'm going to sneak myself into that thing.
You bet your ass the NFL wants that too. I read that they want to go to neutral site. I don't know what you think about that. I don't love it.
I don't love it either, but the NFL knows they can make money off of it. You'll have cities
they can make a lot more money off of it.
You'll have cities bidding on the championship games and paying for.
It'll basically be like a mini Super Bowl, 2 mini Super Bowls in each conference.
Right. And they'll stipulate that the AFC Championship game is in an NFC city, and the NFC Championship game is in an AFC city.
Bullshit that they'll do to make more money, I'm sure.
100%. We are absolutely seeing it, and it's going to happen. So get ready for it, folks. That's
why I think it's turn ourselves to, because I think it's we're on like the track towards it, so we get the preview this year.
When they sold 50,000 tickets in a matter of 24 hours for two teams that are not within driving distance of Atlanta, to go to the championship game. Yep. Because the next thing
Well,
you know,
think about
they'll
it
be
too
partnering
from
with
a
an
Bills perspective. From the Bills' perspective, it's basically like a Super Bowl because it's like a different, right? Like it feels like a Super Bowl. And how long has it been since the Bills have gone to the freaking Super Bowl? So I'm not surprised that the Bills compliment sold out fast. And I think Cincinnati is like Cincinnati. You can drive Cincinnati to Atlanta, right? It's probably like a 10-hour drive.
Yeah, you don't want to do that
It's
drive.
not terrible. I mean, obviously, it's not like something you want to do in like a day, but I'm sure people can do. I'm looking at it right now. Yeah, it's like a 7-hour drive. That's not bad, actually. 7 hours. People are going to drive down from Cincinnati for sure if it's them. Actually, no. It wouldn't. If it was Cincinnati, it wouldn't be them, right? It would be if it was Cincinnati, it would be in Kansas City, right?
Right. If Cincinnati wins, the game's in Kansas City. So
Kansas City to Atlanta is a 10, 11-hour drive. That's not bad.
Yeah.
People are going to do that too.
They just get on a platter anyway. But we circle back. So neutral site championship games coming in the near future. To Sunday to the late game rather between the Cowboys and Niners. Now, for the world yesterday, you hit the most obvious teaser leg in the better part of my adult lifetime of Kansas City and Philadelphia. The books plan on making this all back today on the Dallas Cowboys with their fingers crossed that that's what comes in, because there is a large amount of the bettors, or the betting public, I should say, that is on San Francisco. That said, we are sitting now, Jared, at a number for San Fran laying 4. I see it across the board here. Total sitting at 46.5. 47s are out there as well. I know that you were on sort of San Fran. We talked about this on Friday when you and I were on the show together. But your breakdown for the game simply is what?
Yeah, I mean, nothing's really changed. I'm seeing some splits that are kind of contradicting the Niners are the public bet of the week. And these splits, you have to look at them really carefully, guys. Do not trust these splits that get sent out from the sports books. They do not have your best interest in mind. And I'm looking at a more neutral site that isn't affiliated with a sports book, and I'm seeing a lot of money on Dallas. A lot of money line money on Dallas too. So didn't Mattress Mac dump like $2 million on the Cowboys? So I don't think it's as easy as the Cowboys are the sharp side today and the Niners are the public side. Like I don't subscribe to that notion at all. And I don't subscribe to any of the public sharp betting split BS that gets crammed down our throat every freaking day. I think you have to look at the game itself and handicap it. And listen, I can make a lot of cases for Dallas. There's no doubt about it. Dak Prescott playing well at his peak, I think, is better than Brock Purdy. I don't think there's any doubt about that. But we haven't seen peak Prescott at all this year. And I've used you gave me the nugget the other day. I've used it on a bunch of shows. He hasn't gone 2 games all year straight without throwing a pick. And he was good last week. So, the law of averages, or, based on what we've seen all year with how his pendulum is just violently swung back and forth, this is going to be a game where he probably struggles a little bit with his turnovers and with his decision-making. Brock is a question mark. I mean, if we see the Brock Purdy that we've seen for the last 2 months, I don't think this game's close. I honestly believe that. I honestly believe if Brock Purdy plays pretty, this game is not close, and the Niners just run it all over the Cowboys. But he's a rookie, and he hasn't played that bad game yet, and we're all waiting for the anvil to drop. But all of the numbers to me say that both defenses are pretty even. The quarterbacks, Purdy obviously has played a cleaner season, and I think it's fair to say that Kyle Shanahan has a bit of an edge over McCarthy. But Quinn is kind of a chess guy. He's a tough guy to scheme against, and that's going to be the matchup within the matchup. Kyle Shanahan, play caller for the Niners, against his former boss, your pal down there, former Falcons coach, Dan Quinn, who, by the way, had 2 job interviews this week. Yeah. 2. That is a little bit interesting to me.
Ryan's is interviewing today. He's interviewing this morning.
That's insane.
It is insane.
You guys have a game to play. Can you wait till
the NFL should just make the hiring cycle start after conference championship weekend. Yes. Nobody can be interviewed until the bye week, and that's it. This way, the only coaches who are eliminated are the 2 teams in the Super Bowl, period. but different
I
conversation
don't
for a different day.
understand that at
All
all.
that said,
It makes no
Jared,
sense to me.
I brought this up on my local radio show here yesterday as the 28-3 bowl kicks off today between Dan
There you
Quinn
go.
and Shanahan. The one guy who has been able to figure out Kyle Shanahan at multiple points throughout his career is Dan Quinn. You can go back to a matchup in 2019. That was the year the Niners went to the Super Bowl. They were 11-2 at the time, and the Falcons were 4-9. The Falcons went into San Francisco and won that game and limited the Niners to under 200 yards passing and just about 130 yards rushing. So, I mean, they had a perfect – Dan Quinn has had a perfect game plan against Kyle Shanahan. If there's anybody who knows that offense, it is Dan Quinn and knows how to slow it down. I would argue he's got much better weapons in Dallas to slow down Kyle Shanahan than he ever did in Atlanta. I think that's fair. But, that chess match, as you talked about, is going to be a big part of today.
Yeah, I agree. Who runs the ball better is, I think, going to be a big part of it, too. I mean, again, these are not rocket science points here, guys. I don't think that there's a lot separating these teams. But I do think if the Purdy-Dak matchup swings in Dak's favor, the Cowboys win. If Dak does the Jekyll and Hyde routine that we've seen all year, last week was Dr. Jekyll, right? I don't know which one was which. I forget. I never read the book. But the bad one, if that guy shows up today, that's a bad thing because we haven't seen the bad side of Brock Purdy yet. We have no priors to go off of. We only have like 7 games of data, and they've all been pretty clean. He had one really ugly drive last week. It was his first drive in the rain in the playoffs, and then from that point on, straight nails the rest of the game. And Dak was like that too, but man, that Bucs defense at some point just like gave up. There was not a lot of push, not a lot of fire with that Tampa Bay team last week. And I just don't – I think Dallas is going to be in for a very different level of speed that they didn't see last week with an older, slower Bucs roster. But I'll be honest, when I dug into some of the defensive numbers for the 49ers, it ain't all sunshines and rainbows. Like, they had a couple games over the last few weeks that have been a little bit balky. And DeMeco Ryans – I know he's the hot topic right now amongst all coordinators to get a job, but I can poke holes in a lot of their games over the last few weeks, especially the game against the Raiders. And I don't want to say last week because they won the game by 18, but Geno Smith was slinging it, and Dak can sling it. So we'll see what that looks like today. We'll see how much pressure. I do think the Jason Peters injury is pretty impactful. And I think that is going to have an impact on the game. When you're without your left tackle, and the guy that they're going to put in to replace him, Tyler Smith, has not played well this year. He's the rookie out of Tulsa that they drafted last year, and he's been bouncing all over the offensive line all season. He's been at guard, he was a tackle, and then back to guard. And then when Peters came in, he kind of got pushed aside. Well, now he's going to have to play a very prominent role in today's game. I mean, that is a rookie that I don't think he started at tackle in like 6 to 8 weeks since Peters has been healthy. And now he's going to play left tackle in the biggest game of the year for the Cowboys. Like that's a little scary to me with Bosa and Armstead and those guys coming right at you. So I could see that being a big factor in this game. And Dallas is definitely not the healthier of the two teams. Jaron Kearse on the other side, he's questionable. I don't know if he's going to play. He's their best tackling safety, and he's got the highest Pro Football Focus tackling grade of anyone on the Cowboys roster. Again, when you're facing the Niners, you don't want to be without your left tackle trying to block Nick Bosa and your best tackling safety trying to figure out what's going on with all these weapons. So the injury and the rest and the travel and a lot of the intangibles, I think, favor the Niners. I think the rest of the matchup is relatively easy, and it's just kind of the quarter or relatively even, and it's the quarterback matchup that's going to decide this game, which is not rocket science.
With that, let's turn to our good friend, Bobby Stanley, a.k.a. to join us here as we look to props for these Sunday NFL matches. Bobby, welcome to the rumbling of the props coming through. How are you this morning?
Guys, good morning. Happy Sunday. Still getting over last night's Devontae Smith fiasco. That one kept
What
me up
happened
all
from
night.
Devontae? Did he not throw
I
the
had him
first run?
over. I had him over 62 and a half receiving yards. He had 6 receptions and a 40-yard catch, and still didn't go over. And I'm racking my brain.
I
with
mean,
that one.
these props, man. Like I feel like we get to a certain point where it's just God's will, and like we can cap this stuff till we're blue in the face. But it's just there's so much with gambling that's just
Yeah.
the luck of the draw every week
No, that one
that we have
hurt.
no control over.
I've
We
never
can't
seen
really.
that in player, but I didn't know it was possible to have that kind of stat sheet assembled together. And then I was on Juju. Who looked really good in the first quarter, and then once Mahomes got hurt, he had a 13-yard reception in the first drive. I'm like, all right, I handicapped it right.
Kelsey really was the guy in that game, though.
I was going to say, how nice was it to hit your Kelsey receptions prop in the first quarter within the first 7 minutes?
But he didn't go over his yards prop until very late. Like he had 12 receptions and still didn't go over his yards. And I guess that's a good question to lead off before we get into your picks today. Like the volatility of just dealing with a lot of these little things that have no bearing. Like you can't possibly predict them, and yet they have the outcome on the game. How do you reduce that volatility? How do you get it out of your mind that, listen, this is just something that we deal with in gambling, and you just have to roll with the punches?
For me, I stay the course with what my process is, kind of how I research it. Yeah. You can't plan for Patrick Mahomes either going down or playing on one leg. Blowouts I normally see in the NBA. I don't really see it much in the NFL. But you can't play – I mean, you can't really handicap a game assuming it's going to be a 40-point win or a 30-point win in the divisional round of the playoffs. So I try to just stay as neutral as possible. And then don't get crazy with your units. I mean, some people, they swing like, oh, it's a 5-unit play. I go 1.5 if I really liked it, because you're going to bury yourself chasing. And that's kind of just how I stay the course.
All right, Bobby. Well, let's get into today. Jared questions Brock Purdy. How well can he play? You were also questioning how well Brock Purdy can play.
I do. I'm going under on his passing total. It's 239.5. I think you could find it at 241.5 today. I wrote this up. It was 239. This is his highest total of the season against the best defense he's played all year. He's only hit it in 2 7 games as a starter. And the 2 he hit it against were last week versus Seattle and the Las Vegas Raiders. So we know how bad Las Vegas is. Let's take that out of the equation. The Seattle game last week, 55% of those yards came on yards after catch. 22% of those yards came on one Debo reception. This Dallas Cowboys defense are the 8th best tackling defense in the league. I don't think we're going to see these screens and short yardage plays go for 50 to 70 yards against the Cowboys today. So we already talked about Dan Quinn. We talked about his familiarity with Shanahan's scheme. So I just think the number's too high. I'm going to go under on Brock Purdy today.
I like it. Another guy I really like on your list today is Brandon Ayuk. He's had the quietest 1,000-yard season, I think, of any receiver in the history of the NFL. We haven't talked about this guy at all, as in he's literally the last guy we always mention when we talk about all the weapons on the Niners offense. It's always Debo and it's McCaffrey and it's Kittle. Excuse me. It's very rarely Brandon Ayuk, and maybe that's why we're getting a decent number here.
We did. I got him at 3.5 over on the receptions. I didn't want to touch his yards for the exact reason I just mentioned about Brock Purdy, but I think they're going to find ways of getting the ball in his hands. You know, the focus is going to be on McCaffrey. It's going to be on Debo as well. But Ayuk and Purdy had a really good connection in Debo's absence. I think they're going to have to go back to that today. So you're going to see short yardage situations where he's the first read. I think they're going to find ways of getting him the ball. That's why I like kind of his receptions play more than anything else.
Nice.
I think you have extra large huevos going with this guy's over today. It's a complete stay away from me, and you know what I'm talking about. Joe Mixon, even though you're doing the combined rushing receiving, I don't see if he has more than 35 rushing yards, I'd be shocked.
So for this one, it's a volume play for me on Mixon. Yes, the O-line is banged up. You're not going to want to drop back 40 to 50 times with the entire left side of your O-line. So what do? You establish a run game, you neutralize the pass rush, you set up short yardage passing situations with Mixon. And then I look at Mixon in his last year's postseason. He averaged 17 rush attempts per game. He had 11 last week against Baltimore, but they only had the ball for 27 minutes, 5 minutes less than their normal time of possession. So he would have hit 14 or 15, I think, rush attempts last week. For me, it's a volume play, and if you're looking for them to stay competitive, I don't want Burrow throwing the ball 50 times. He's going to get destroyed. So I think he sees anywhere from 14 to 15 rush attempts, and he's heavily juiced over on his receptions, over 3.5.
Yeah.
And he's played really well in the receiving game. So I think if they want a chance today, you got to get the ball in Mixon's hands.
I agree with you 100%. And I think because now that this number has gotten to 6, I think there's going to be some value on Bengals offensive players, because if the Bills do have a lead, Joe's going to have to be throwing it. And that's going to be that's going to be an interesting part of this game. I'm curious who has the lead in this game and what the Bengals do if they have a lead, because they're not a traditional power running team. It's going to, like, the game script here is going to be very fascinating depending on which team has a lead. We love the long shot touchdowns, and this one's a pretty long shot. And it's a guy that scored a bunch of playoff touchdowns in his past, just not with this team. Give me the vibe on checking into the Hilton tonight.
Let's hope it's a Hilton and not a Hojo's. So I'm on T.Y. Hilton over. I'm on T.Y. Hilton touchdown. It's plus 600.
There you go.
He
over a half touchdown. You nailed it.
Over a 0.5 touchdown. He gets Jimmy Ward. He's the safety slot corner for the Niners, who's given up 5 touchdowns this season. I see T.Y. Hilton's snap percentage going up every week over the last 4 weeks. And it's really hard to find value this late in the season for long shot guys. I mean, we see it with Kelsey, we see it with Jalen Hurts. Kenneth Gainwell was a guy last night. If you hit it on the last series of the game. So it's really trying to find some good value there. I do like it at 6-1. I do think there's a chance he can squeak in the end zone. And like you said, there are some weaknesses to this 49ers defense, particularly in the secondary. And I do think it's Jimmy Ward in coverage. So yeah, 6-1. Give me Hilton as an overlooked guy in this secondary or in this receiving core who's new to the team.
By the way, we did get our Boston Scott touchdown yesterday, gentlemen. Jared, you and I talked about that on Friday. We did get our Boston Scott touchdown. So it was.
I didn't bet it like a fool.
I know, me either.
Like, I friends that I have did bet it.
I gave it out on multiple shows.
The show we did yesterday.
I'll be honest, though, Mark, I think every single human being, though, everyone gave it out. Like, I saw it everywhere. When he scored, my timeline erupted. Like, it was like they just won the Super Bowl.
Let me ask you a question, Bobby. Yeah. Of the main players, the big names, the Jamar Chases, the Stephon Diggs, the Josh Allens, the Joe Burrows, if you were going to lean on one of those big names that the public generally looks to in a prop, where would you just lean?
Just lean Stephon Diggs. I think he's going to destroy Eli Apple. Eli Apple is one of the biggest liabilities in the secondary. We saw what Diggs did last week. I think they're going to go back to that. Him to score touchdowns plus 110. I think his receiving yards are like 80.5. They're taking shot after shot on Stephon Diggs. We saw it last week. They're going to keep airing it out to him. And if he gets Eli Apple in coverage, it's over. So I like Diggs at least in the early game.
Jared, did we talk about this on Friday when we were together? So one of the ESPN talking heads put up there and asked, why isn't Lou Anarumo getting more looks for head coach jobs and everything else? And I replied, and it was meant to be completely sarcastic. I wrote 2 words, Eli Apple, right? And then I have been filled with nothing but Bengals people in my mentions. Somebody even said to me,
you did that.
Eli Apple's having one of the best seasons of his career. And I'm like, Eli Apple doesn't have best years. He just has periods where he's not getting burnt. And somebody compared him to Sauce Gardner. I'm just like, okay, I'm done. These Bengals fans are way too much.
Yeah, he's applesauce Gardner. If it wasn't for Eli Apple, the Rams wouldn't have a Super Bowl. So thank you for existing, Eli Apple, and I will fade you every chance I get.
And I also would not have won my Cooper Cup MVP bet last year.
If it was not for, but no, he's a guy. Diggs is a guy I would definitely pick on. Sadly, you have to go with chalk. Kelsey scored yesterday. Jalen Hurts scored yesterday. Those 2 guys alone, at least half the public were on, and for good reason. So we're at that point. You're feeding your best players. McCaffrey actually scares me a little bit today. I do think we see a little bit.
I wouldn't bet Niners touchdown props today. I'll be honest. I was really bullish on the Niners earlier in the week. I think they're the wrong side. I do. I think the way that the market's not really moved that much. I think at 4, I would probably maybe come off and bet Dallas. I'm gonna obviously the pick's out. It's locked in. I can't take it back now. I can't bet Dallas plus 4, but that's not really going to help me too much. But I don't think the Niners are going to have as much success today as they had last week, and I think it's going to be a nip and tuck game. Doesn't mean the Niners can't cover. I've been on the wrong side pre-game before. That's one, and I've been on the right side pre-game before. That's lost. That happens all the time in gambling. But I'm not getting the warm, cushy vibes today about the Niners offense. I think it's going to be a struggle for them against that Cowboys defense. But that could totally screw the game up. Like that could just totally give the game to San Francisco.
I talked about this on Friday about the Cowboys. So yesterday was the chalk, right? Yesterday and if Mahomes wasn't hurt, that would have been a 2-score game. I think we would all agree on that. The last second cover at the end. But today is I think should be more competitive. I do think the Cowboys pull off this upset. And I looked at it as, what different methods of victory do you have in your pocket? The Cowboys, they won in blowouts. They won in track meets. They won in low-scoring, grinded-out games. They've come from behind 2 scores. I've seen the gauntlet from them. I don't know if Brock Purdy has anything in his tool, his tool case, other than we're going to run the ball really well and we're going to not get behind at any point in the game. And you're playing the team with the best turnover or the most takeaways in the league and the second best turnover differential. What happens to San Fran when he's down 2 scores or he's down 1 score in the second half? That hasn't happened yet. So I like Dallas as a more complete team that we just know more about.
I agree.
Did you guys see, Jared, did you see this as well, Bobby, that our good buddy Clev TA, who writes for the Pickswise.com website, he had a touchdown prop yesterday. He picked all 4 tight ends to be the first touchdowns.
I did see that.
Home. You got Kelsey, he got Goddard yesterday. My worry in that prop more than anything would be Dawson Knox. I think Dalton Schultz absolutely can score the first touchdown. Like that's the one that feels like, and it's crazy because that one has the longest odds, but I feel like that's the one that's more likely to happen to the 2 than Dawson Knox, just because Josh Allen.
I will be betting both of those individually today because first of all, Clev's very smart. Second of all, if he wins that bet, he's probably
$10 for
job, and he's probably going to quit all of his jobs for a little while. He's not going to need the money. It's a 6-figure payout if he hits that thing
for $10.
I
6
hope
figures.
he does.
$10.
If I were him, I would be sprinkling a little bit on Diggs, a little bit on Higgins, a little bit on Chase. Throw 50 bucks each way.
Very tough.
Let me ask you this, because I saw his payout offer right now is like $637.
No, I wouldn't take that.
Yeah.
No.
Nah. If you hit the Knox one and you're heading into the Dallas game, that'll jump up.
Yeah, let me see what the payout is heading into the last game, and then I'll decide.
I would argue
7 is not worth it though.
Okay, no, I would argue though. If the game times were flipped and I had Dallas San Fran first and Cincy Buffalo after, I would hold out for one more. Because again, I think that Dalton Schultz is the most likely end zone target for the Cowboys if they're not on the 2-yard line, right? More so than CeeDee Lamb. I don't feel that good about Dawson Knox. I'd be more inclined to cash out now. I know.
Knox was the first. And he scored. I think that makes it harder, actually. But no, man, I'm rooting for Clev TA, man. It's an awesome ticket just to see.
It's a fantastic ticket. I think we get to a certain point with a lot of these props too. It's all about entertainment value. With the thing that Club TA is betting, obviously not with everything. Yeah. But when you're doing that and you're betting a $10 ticket, basically a lottery ticket, the entertainment value matters way more than any sharp decision about a cash out or a hedge or anything like that. Like, just let the freaking thing ride, man, and see where the chips fall. Like, that's where I feel about that particular bet. So I don't think he watches our show. If he does, Cleb, do not even think about cashing that thing out, man. Let that sucker ride.
No,
I hope
we're riding with you.
Because I'm betting both those guys today, first touchdown bets, in your honor.
Clev, I'm on your side too, brother. I hope you cash.
Yeah, I might. Let's all just agree to tail him right now, each individually on both.
100%. That's what scares me because he likes the Cowboys this week, and that's one of the reasons why I think I'm on the wrong side of this Niners bet, because I trust him a lot, and he's made a lot of really smart bets for us this year. And he's but to be fair though, this goes back to more side total than props, but from everything I've heard and read this week, there is a lot of really sharp, respected opinions on both sides of a lot of games. Not as much yesterday, but definitely today. Cincinnati at 6 has been a dividing line. San Francisco at 3, dividing line, and Dallas at 4, dividing line. So you see the windows there. Like it's like a point, half a point, one direction. and the smart money will step in on the other side and buy it and drive it back down. And we've seen that multiple times this week. We've been pretty stable the last 24 hours, but I think there's a lot of really smart people that are on both sides of both of these games today.
Well, and that's what happens, Jared, when you have a limited sample size, right? When there's 14, 15, 16 games to pick from, finding sharper sides here because the public gravitates towards 3 or 4 of those games, and that's it. So it's easier to find smart people looking at angles that people aren't. When you have a smaller sample size of 4 NFL games to choose from, clearly you're going to get things that are split on opposite sides. Sharp guys are going to like one way, other sharp folks are going to like the other way. It's the nature of it. That's why I always say, look, if you don't trust your process enough to make a bet on your own, then don't make the bet, period. If you're just blindly tail somebody, because just don't make the bet. Just stay off of it. So, again, I'm with you, buddy. There's a lot of sharp people on both sides here. You just have to trust your process and think you're on the right side and believe it. That's it. Bobby Stanley, appreciate the time as always, brother. Give him a follow on Twitter at Prop Holiday with 2 L's.
Good job, Bobo.
We'll talk to you mañana, brother. All right, Jared, that brings us to the moment of truth. But before then, I want to remind you guys, Let's Bet It is presented by Superbook Sports. Can you beat Vegas this football season? Superbook gives you a chance every week to go head-to-head with the best odds makers in Las Vegas. No fancy computer algorithms. No one across the pond setting lines for American sports. Just the best team of traders in the business at the Superbook in Las Vegas. Plus, some of the best odds and promo bets in the country. So if you're in Arizona, Colorado, Iowa, Nevada, New Jersey, or Tennessee, download the Superbook Sports app or visit superbook.com to start your battle against Vegas. With that, Jared, we have talked much about the Pickswise.com website. Would you like to remind Pickswise Nation what is up there one more time?
Well, you and Clev TA and Andrew Ortenberg and Bobby, actually all 4 of you guys, the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse today, with the 3-star plays, Mixon, Bengals, Cowboys under, and I'm in the corner with none of them in my back pocket. So what does that say about me as a sharp Pickswise man, that all of the plays that are on Pickswise's site today, I guess you could say I've got a little piece of the Bengals because I've got the teaser, but it's obviously a much different number. And listen, I think this is the prime example. There is no right or wrong answer to these tests right now. Obviously, after the game's over, we could say who was right and who was wrong. But we just told you that there's really smart people on both sides of all of these games today. I can make a case for the Niners. Mark's going to make his case for the under. Clev makes his case for the Cowboys. They're all valid arguments. But the margin for error with these playoff games is so thin and the volatility is through the roof that you just have to go with your gut. And I know this sounds super anti-sharp and it goes against a lot of gambling rules, but at this stage, especially when we get to the Super Bowl, this is exactly how I feel. There is no sharp or square in the Super Bowl. It's just go with the hell you want. Flip some coin, literally flip a coin. People bet on the freaking coin flip. That's literally what people do in the Super Bowl. But at this stage, it's just, these are like mini Super Bowls. All of these games are just the best teams in the league going blow for blow. You're going to see a lot of stuff today in the Dallas-San Francisco game that you didn't see earlier in the year because these teams want to throw changeup. So all of the numbers that you're looking at, the priors and the hit rates of all these props, they don't mean as much because if I'm a coach, I'm trying to show these teams something that no one has seen all year. So go with what you think is going to happen, trust who you like, and just pray. Because once these games kick off, it's a freaking crapshoot. And these games, this has definitely been the most insane NFL season that I can remember. And as much as the people on the Pickswise 3-star page right now are as sharp as they come, I don't freaking know what's going to happen in these games. Just enjoy them for crying out loud.
Let me ask you, and again, sacrilege statement here, so I fully acknowledge it. But admitting that you have some liability with the Cincinnati teaser and admitting that you have some liability with playing San Francisco, would it scare you to do a tease of Buffalo down to a pick and Dallas up to 10?
No. I think that's and I'll be honest, what did we learn yesterday? And I know that the Giants game was a severe blowout, so maybe not the best example. But the Chiefs-Jaguars game is a perfect example of this. All the teaser numbers covered on all sides. If you tease the over down to 46-ish, you hit that.
At home.
You tease the so I think the teasers, and I wrote about this in the column this week, more than half of the column this week was about teasers. Because I think the later you go in the postseason, the more value teasers have because the lines get sharper. There's less blowouts. The games are closer. And I remember a weekend last year, all 4 games, all teasers hit, whichever side you played. So, yes, I am going to be betting something else before the games start that is probably Buffalo, Dallas related. I don't know what yet. Like I said, maybe Buffalo in the first half, and then I'll kind of reassess at halftime. Maybe I'll bet a live bet on them if it gets to a certain number, and then we'll float it through. But that's a good look. I mean, Buffalo to a pick 'em. I think Buffalo's going to win this game. I just don't know by how much. And yeah, I think Dallas, based on the market, is kind of the right side. So you get them up to 10 in a game with a total of 46. Yeah, I think there's some value to that bet. And I know that's not a traditional teaser. It's not like it was yesterday. You get them through both keys. But you're still getting it through a 7 on the Niners side, Dallas side. You're getting it through the 3 on Buffalo's side. So at least you're moving it through one key number and then a bunch of secondary keys. I think that's a good look. I do.
Going to be interesting. All right. Plays of the day. We know where you are. We know where I am. Would you like me to kick it off? I will get us here. As I put on the Pickswise.com website, when this number opened at 46.5, it felt like a gift. I am taking the under here. Now, comparatively last week at the totals, San Francisco, Seattle total opened at 42.5, was bet down. Dallas, Tampa Bay opened at 45.5 and was bet down. Statistically, Cowboys have the 8th best pass defense. Niners have the 2nd best run defense. They're both top 5 in total points allowed per game. Top 2 teams in turnover differential. My number had this thing at 44.5. I think odds makers saw 6 wildcard games go over, and they baked a little bit into the total. Well, 6 would have went over if the idiot kicker had made an extra point or 2. But that said, again, you talked about Brock Purdy. He hasn't seen a defense like this. I'm not saying he's going to play bad, but I think success looks a little bit different. Dak Prescott has not gone 2 consecutive games without a turnover. I think the Cowboys can be run on, and that's what Kyle Shanahan will do. Hopefully that should keep the scoring low. But one of the other things, Jared, and I don't know if you're into the referee handicaps for games, but Bill Vinovich is the ref for this game.
Yeah, I am.
Nearly 60% to the under for his career. The game's averaged 36.5 points. Vinovich's crews called the fewest roughing the passer, fewest defensive holding penalties, and 2nd fewest pass interference penalties. I know you got a shaky kicker with Dallas. I think that brings a little bit of variance into play as opposed to going for it. From the 23-yard line as opposed to kicking the field goal, but also a missed kick here might be a higher probability. So I like the under. It's at 47 now. Take it. Go get it. 47, 46.5. I think both of these defenses show out today, and we get a game that goes under the total.
I love that handicap. The part about the referees, guys, it's not something we talk about a lot because usually we only talk about the refs during the game. As the shitstorm is being thrown against the wall. But I do think pre-game referee handicapping, if you know where to find the numbers and if you can rely on them.
It's just a piece of information. Who's refereeing the game?
It's just another tool.
Again, I know most of these guys' tendencies off the top of my head. Clete Blakeman is always trending to the over, stuff like that. So it depends on the situation. I think when you get 2 defensive teams like this and a ref that goes under, he's going into his mind going, I'm going to let these guys play. These are defensive-minded teams. That's the way it's going to go. It sort of feeds into it. I wouldn't necessarily, if I get Bills, Bengals, and Bill Vinovich, I'm not going, okay, well, this game's going under, right? Like, it doesn't work that way. I think there are certain areas where the ref handicap plays in, other ones where not so much. I
like it. I like the approach. I like the thought process, and now we'll see what happens once the games start, right? Our control.
Yes, both yesterday's games went under.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't shock me to see Bills Bengals go under, given it's supposed to be snowing halfway through this game at a very high rate. Yeah.
I didn't check the weather. That was a mistake on my part. I should have checked the weather forecast in Orchard Park, for crying out loud, of all places. I'll do that after the show, and I'll see if that changes my opinion on the Bills chucking it all over the yard. I would guess a bad weather game would favor Cincy, right? A little bit. The Bills are a little more of a vertical passing game. And you would imagine because of the Bengals offensive line, it's going to be short, quick, not a lot of air yards today for Joe Burrow. A little more gimmick, a little more change up, and Josh Allen obviously throwing the ball. So that could be an interesting little wrinkle here if the weather turns into a snow globe in Orchard Park at some point during this game. I think that that's going to matter. Are you looking it up right now?
Yeah, hold on. I'm going to 2 different places here. It's supposed to be 90% chance of snow by about 3 o'clock this afternoon.
That's when the game starts, right? 3 o'clock. Eastern.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that I think that changes my dynamic a little bit on that game. I would say that favors the Bengals slightly, not a whole lot, but slightly. Even though the Bills know how to play in snow, they do it often. All right, I won't beat around the bush anymore. I'm sticking to my guns here. It's in the column this week. I will go down with the ship. I will go down with Kyle Shanahan and Brock Purdy because that was my first look on this game. So I've swung, my pendulum has swung. And again, if you want my full handicap on this game, go watch Playbook. I gave it out like 5 times during this week at some point on this show. But I think the key to me is it's Brock Purdy and Dak Prescott. The rest of I do think the rest of this game is a very evenly matched game. I think the coaches know each other very well. I think the defenses are kind of on the same level. I would say Dallas has a better pass rush. The Niners are better against the run. And both of those things are going to be key. I think this game is going to be decided by which quarterback makes the first mistake and which quarterback makes fewer mistakes. Over the last 8 weeks, Brock Purdy's made basically no mistakes. Maybe there's one coming. Law of averages. That's a gambler's fallacy. If a coin was flipped 100 times and it was 100 tails in a row, everybody would bet heads on the 101st flip. But the reality is it's still a 50-50 chance on the next flip no matter what. So Brock Purdy has played turnover free for 6-8 weeks or so. So everyone's thinking the turnover's coming. The turnover's coming. I don't know if that's a fallacy. That's the gambler. Literally, that's the gambler's fallacy. So I don't subscribe to that notion, but I do think there is a world where Dak outplays Brock, and that's why the Cowboys win this game. But I also think there are a lot of scenarios where Dak screws the pooch and makes that terrible throw, and all of a sudden the Niners have first and goal at the 10-yard line, and they're up 7-0 in the first quarter. And then the snowball starts to happen. So I think because of Dak's volatility, that's where I give the Niners a bit of an edge here because we haven't seen that volatility from Brock Purdy. But I fully admit that the market does not favor me right now, that we are seeing a lot of handle come in on San Francisco on the spread, and the money hasn't tilted the odds at all. There hasn't been a lot of sharp market moving, money coming in on the Niners. It has been mostly Dallas on that side. There's been some square money on the Cowboys too, Mattress Mac being the big one. I don't know for sure, but I'm pretty sure he put like $1 million or something on the Cowboys money line. I don't know what the exact number is. $2 million. Thank you very much. So there's a lot of square money coming in on the Cowboys money line as well. I think that's the discrepancy here. Niners spread, Cowboys money line is kind of that public barrier that we're seeing. I think I'm on the wrong side, but I don't know for sure. I could see the Niners winning this game handily if Dak screws up. So I'm going to stick to my original lean. I originally liked the Niners, then I kind of wavered. Now I'm just hoping that it's the right side, and we'll see how the game plays out. But I think there's a lot of edges for San Francisco if you look at the quarterback matchup here.
All right, well, that'll do it for us today here on Let's Bet It. He's Jared Smith. I'm Mark Zuno. Make sure you guys subscribe to the Pickswise YouTube channels. Give a thumbs up and a like to the content there as well. Download the Pickswise app, available on the Apple Store and Google Play. Let's Bet It, presented by Superbook Sports. We appreciate you guys joining us on this Divisional Playoff Sunday. We'll be back tomorrow to recap it all. Make sure you guys keep it locked in right here to Pickswise and Pickswise.com. For Jared Smith, I'm Mark Zuno. Have a great Sunday. Good luck with your bets. Go get it. Go bet it. We'll see you tomorrow.